reading from the letter of St. Paul to the Corinthians. Consider your own calling, brothers and sisters. Not many of you were wise by human standards. Not many were powerful. Not many were of noble birth. Rather, God chose the foolish of the world to shame the wise. And God chose the weak of the world to shame the strong. And God chose the lowly and despised of the world, those who count for nothing, to reduce to nothing those who are something, so that no human being might boast before God. It is due to him that you are in Christ Jesus, who became for us wisdom from God, as well as righteousness, sanctification, and redemption, so that, as it is written, whoever boasts should boast in the Lord. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
And a responsorial psalm. Blessed the man who fears the Lord.
Blessed the man who fears the Lord.
Blessed the man who fears the Lord, who greatly delights in his commands. His posterity shall be mighty upon the earth. The righteous generation shall be blessed.
Blessed are the man who fears the Lord.
Wealth and riches shall be in his house. His generosity shall endure forever. Light shines through the darkness for the upright. He is gracious and merciful and just.
Blessed are the man who fears the Lord.
Well for the man who is gracious and lends, who conducts his affairs with justice. He shall never be moved. The just one shall be in everlasting remembrance.
Blessed the man who fears the Lord.
An evil report he shall not fear. His heart is firm, trusting in the Lord. His heart is steadfast. He shall not fear till he looks down upon his foes.
Blessed the man who fears the Lord.
Lavishly he gives to the poor. His generosity shall endure forever. His horn shall be exalted in glory.
Blessed the man who fears the Lord. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah. The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to St. Matthew. Jesus went around to all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom, and curing every disease and illness. At the sight of the crowds, his heart was moved with pity for them, because they were troubled and abandoned, like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is abundant, but the laborers are few. So ask the master of the harvest to send out laborers for his harvest." The Gospel of the Lord. For those that might have taken the occasion or had the chance to read the second reading in the Office of Readings in the Breviary today, it takes itself from one of the writings of St. Vincent de Paul. And I think that in 5 paragraphs, I think you can count probably 20 or 25 times the use of the word "the poor," because this is the primary focus he had. And it's interesting to know the kind of conversion he had, because he was basically doing chaplaincy work for a very rich family just outside Paris for a number of years. Then he got a call in the middle of the night to go and hear the confession and give the last rites to some poor peasant out in the countryside somewhere who was dying. And that experience changed him. He said, you know, there is so much need out here. And from that point on, he and a group of people that he got gathered with him dedicated themselves to ministry to the poor. And that has been the foundation of the Vincentians ever since. They come into those areas of the United States, whether in the world, where there is great poverty, where they can minister. The Daughters of Charity do the same kind of thing. And even though it's not quite the case anymore, not in the same way, for a long time, the Daughters of Charity owned every hospital it seemed like in the major cities up and down I-65, from Chicago to Mobile. And the hospitals in Nashville and in Montgomery for sure, I think Birmingham also, have closed down. The one in Indianapolis is still going, in Chicago is still going, here in Providence we're still going. But their dedication was to make sure that they had a meaningful amount of indigent care in these hospitals. One of the reasons St. Margaret's in Montgomery closed is because they couldn't afford to take on 40% of all the indigent care in the city anymore. Okay? So that was their mission. And the sisters, who are the Daughters of Charity, you can find them in the poorest parishes, St. James Major, for example. So this is a great witness for us. And if that doesn't sound a lot like Pope Francis, you need to be listening a little closer, I think, because that's exactly his whole point, to go to the peripheries, to go to the poor, to minister. And so Vincent did exactly that, leaving Paris, going to the countryside, going to the people who needed him and his ministry. For us today, we can be very thankful for the Vincentians that have ministered historically in our archdiocese, particularly in the area around Auburn. And for us now to ask the Lord to help us to be sensitive to the needs of whoever we encounter today. There are all kinds of levels of poverty, after all. And sometimes there's poverty of spirit and poverty of loneliness that's far worse than poverty economically. So for any people that we encounter today, may the Lord give us the strength truly to love and to minister and to be joyful witnesses of the gospel for them. Let us stand and pray.